Hello and welcome to colleagues from across the world. We're delighted you're able to join with us for this session, one of our Stay Connected 20 webinar series, supporting children with additional needs through distance learning. We've had such an immensely positive response to this series of webinars, and it's our privilege to have had so many of you joining with us. Just a few housekeeping points before we welcome our speakers for today. Can I remind all participants to please keep your microphones on mute and your cameras turned off for the duration of the session. Due to the varying bandwidth in different countries, there may be intermittent issues with sound. If you do experience any difficulties with audio, do please kindly check the sound settings on your device or try leaving the webinar and joining again. Should you wish to leave the webinar at any time, please do so by selecting the red button for Leave Meeting. We want to be able to give you as much opportunity as possible to ask questions or to share an experience. The best way for us to be able to do this is if you please use the online chat, making sure that you select sending your message to the host. That way we'll be able to collect all of your interactions and follow up as necessary after the webinar itself. The webinar will be recorded and made available as soon as possible. Just a reminder to those who may find the live chat distracting, there is an option to turn off your view of this whilst participating in the webinar session. We're really grateful to all of those who are providing us with feedback on this webinar series and proposing topics for future sessions. We invite you to participate in a short post-webinar survey. You could use your phone camera to scan our QR code showing on screen now to access the survey, and we will show the code again at the end of this session, or alternatively, you can use the link that will be sent to you with the recording. Next slide, please. As schools, their teachers and their students across the world navigate their way through the impact of COVID-19, SEND students and their families face significant challenges. For so many students, school with its routines and various support systems provides a safety net. With a move to remote and distance learning, how can we ensure that the learning experiences for SEND students can be as effective as possible? Of course, we must avoid falling into the trap of referring to SEND students as an homogeneous group. Each child is unique and will have different levels and types of support needs. For some, there may be the academic challenge of trying to access the curriculum more independently and with less of the careful scaffolding provided through a school context. For some, the lack of individual support received at school may have significant impact on self-confidence and general well-being. For some, the lack of social interaction will be a challenge, and for others, it may be a welcome respite. For families, there may be a need to find ways to fill a gap created by the loss of personalised therapies and assistive technologies at a time when also dealing with other stresses, such as home working and the demands of other siblings. Is this current global crisis giving us educators an opportunity to rethink how we might address the need for inclusive and accessible education? Our panel of experienced educators will today be participating in a roundtable discussion about adapting learning and teaching methods for learners of varying age groups, abilities, and contexts. During their discussions, we welcome you in sharing your thoughts, ideas, and any questions you may have. It's my pleasure to welcome to our roundtable today Shana Curtis, Assistant Head and Head of Inclusion from Nord Anglia International School in Dubai, Kate Circuit, Additional Needs Teacher from Panaga School in Brunei, Dr. Angie Wigford, Educational Psychologist at Dover Court International School, Singapore, Julie Nugroho, Principal for Early Years and Primary from Sekolah Cita Buana in Jakarta, Indonesia, and Stephen Kilgour, SEND Advisor and Outreach Teacher from Tapestry in the United Kingdom. I'd now like to invite each of our speakers to kindly introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their context and their experience in relation to supporting students with special educational needs and disabilities. And we'll start by welcoming Shana Curtis.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be invited to present today. I myself am really looking forward to the discussion, as I am certainly no expert and we are learning every hour, every minute of the day. So I'm really looking forward to this. Just a bit of context about me and the school that I work for. I was one of the founding members of Nord Anglia, or NAS Dubai as we like to be known. 6 years ago. We established the inclusion department 4 years ago, based on the numbers of students that were arriving at our school. We are a through school, so we do work and support students right from nursery in the early years all the way through to post 16. And we have a range of needs at our school. So we have some profound needs and we have some very, very mild needs. So it's a real range that we work with. And one thing that has been really interesting for us recently, since moving to the virtual schooling platform that we're currently experiencing, we are governed by the Ministry of Education and the KHDA, and they actually introduced a KHDA inspection. So we were inspected about 2 to 3 weeks ago for our virtual schooling. So that was really interesting and a really good opportunity to self-reflect and just discuss the shift and the transition from being in school to virtual schooling. So that was something that was really lovely. But as I said, I'm really looking forward to the discussion today with my colleagues here, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Shana. And can I welcome Kate Circuit?
Hello. Like Shannon, I'd just like to say thank you, everybody, for joining. And I'm also really looking forward to the points that come out of our discussion. I am currently posted in Brunei. I work at an international school, so it is a mainstream school, but we do have children with a range of different additional needs. I'm at the moment working in the early years school, but back in the UK, I worked in the primary school of a special needs school specifically for children with severe learning difficulties. We've been online learning since the beginning of March, and it's been really interesting to see how our approaches have developed and the things that we've been able to do as things have become a bit more flexible at the start and the end of our lockdown. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Kate, and welcome, please, Angie.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you, Fieldwork, for putting on these really interesting and, at the moment, very important webinars. I'm the Ed Psych at Dover Court International School, which is an amazing inclusive school. We have 1,650 students, and we do, like the Shana School in Dubai, we do a really wide range of provision. So we cater for a wide range of neurodiversity and learning differences in a really unique model. So of course, I'm the EP, I'm not a classroom teacher, so I've asked all the classroom teachers of our Pathways classes, which are our specialist classes, although of course we do loads of integration work. I've asked them and I've got a lot of their tips to add. So it's not me, it's my amazing school that's contributing most in this. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Thank you, Angie. We're looking forward to the perspectives of lots of different roles here. And on that note, I'd like to welcome Julie, please.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see all of you to be here. And, you know, I didn't hesitate when Fieldwork asked me to join the panel tonight. And because of the interesting topic that it's very rare, and I'm looking forward to share with my colleague here and all of you here. And I've been working with the school in Jakarta, Sekolah Cita Buana, established in 1995, and we started the beginning of the inclusive education in Indonesia. And we have special education department which have children with different kind of disability and learning challenges. And up to now, almost 25 years, we are striving to make the integration work very well. And yeah, it's been working really well right now. And just like said by our previous panelist, it's not me, it's my whole team in Sekolah Cita Buana who make this thing happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. And we move from Jakarta in Indonesia over to the UK and welcome Stephen.
Everyone, yes, I'm Stephen. I am a special needs advisor. Until last summer, I was the deputy head teacher of a complex needs school in London. It was a school for children aged 2 to 11 with a range of needs. I'm now based in the northeast of England in Newcastle, and I visit nurseries and schools offering free support for their special needs cohorts.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you again to all of you. It's a privilege to host such a widely experienced group, and I'm really looking forward to your discussions focused on our key questions. So let's start. And Kate, I think you're starting our discussion, please, with our first key topic.
So it's not uncommon for learners with additional needs to experience difficulties of communication and social interaction with others. So our first question is, during this period of social isolation, social distancing and lockdown, how are such difficulties exacerbated?
Hi everyone, it's Shanna here. Just something that I've really noticed is how much the students are really missing the routine and familiarity that comes with being in school. In particular, they're really missing their friends and teachers. Here in Dubai, we've had really strict lockdown procedures. We had 3 weeks of complete lockdown, where you were only allowed out of your house for an emergency. So it has been extremely strict and very different for them. And that's certainly something that we found has really exacerbated, I guess, the needs for social opportunity, emotional support. I'm very keen to hear more about what that is like for some of the other countries. Yeah.
So in Brunei, we are just starting to come out of our lockdown. We had the same thing. It was we were locked down for quite a number of weeks, and we're just starting to come out. So our children are allowed play dates at the moment, and lots of our children have been going to other people's houses for that. So it's been really nice to see some social situations happening for the children who really need it, because it has been quite telling seeing what our children have been posting on our online forum, how difficult some of them are finding it without that opportunity for social interaction.
Sorry, I think quite a big problem, especially for children who are autistic, is that sort of lack of routine that they might be used to at school. Many of the learners that I work with might be using like a visual timetable, something like that, that they don't necessarily get to access at home, or just doesn't necessarily work in that environment. So I think that the changes in routine can be particularly difficult for children with autism.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Some of our children are, the routine patterns that they have are a bit shaken. But I also find a very interesting finding is that some of our students who've been quite some time with us, they are able to adjust it well within a week. I'm talking about children with the high function uh, learning challenge and disability.
I think that our children are really different. Those who can connect on Zoom, or which is what we use, or whatever other platform, are advantaged. And of course, a lot of our children with additional needs can connect on Zoom, so they can do those sorts of social connection with the class. I teach one class, and in fact, I teach two classes, and in each of they're only small classes. They're year 7 and year 8, and they're both 10 students. And in each of those classes, there have been students who haven't been able to take part in Zoom sessions. So it's the Zoom aspect, or the online, learning, where you can see everybody's faces, you can see where they are, you can have those conversations, hasn't worked for everybody.
And then the second question, what strategies to support communication and interaction have you put in place to support the engagement of both learners and their families? So like Angie, we've been using Zoom to try and support both our families in terms of having parent-teacher conferences via Zoom, and we've also had Zoom parties and Zoom meets for our children, so that we can have that sort of interaction with them. We were also able to make social stories for the children about us not being in school and them being at home. And fortunately, because of the lockdown not being quite as strict here in Brunei, parents were able to come and collect those from school. So those are some of the things that we've done. We also encourage children to do show and tells. So they would record videos which we would upload onto Tapestry and share with the children in their classes, to try and keep that little bit of a link between friends and peers during our lockdown. So Angie, I don't know whether you want to comment next.
Sure. One of the teachers that I spoke to said that her communication with parents has become much more individualized. She has a class of 8 students, and as Sarah said at the beginning, their needs are so diverse that they have been having daily conversations with many of the parents just to talk about how to support their sensory needs, how to support their learning needs. And it's been a very, very emotional experience for a lot of parents, because one, it's very stressful. We have people trying to support a child with extreme needs who have 4 other children to support. So a lot of our communication has been with parents, because of course they're having to be quite sophisticated teachers. So that's one aspect. Shanna?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. We are using a combination of live sessions through Microsoft Teams and pre-recorded and uploaded items onto Seesaw. We like you have also really been I guess prioritizing those parents who have had to take on the role of not only being mum or dad, but also a teacher at home. And we're very, very mindful of their well-being and their mental health as well. Some of the things that we've tried to include just to engage and to communicate, and I guess offer that sense of feeling connected, is we've kind of provided the school with lots of social media challenges. So on our Facebook page and Instagram pages, we've tried to use some of the I guess the normal routines of our school. So, for example, on a Thursday morning, as the children are arriving, we offer a busking, I guess a busking opportunity for students and staff to come forward, share dances, songs, musical items. And actually that's something that we've transferred over onto social media, so that those routines are still in place, but it's giving those students an opportunity to stay connected. We also held a virtual Parents' Day recently, which I guess is kind of your old-fashioned parents' evening. But it was an opportunity to communicate, especially for those students who have got special educational needs or who are requiring much more of a personalised provision. It really gave those families time to stop, ask for support, be advised. One thing they're really keen to do is, as a school, with our senior leadership team and our inclusion team, we offer daily virtual drop-ins as well. So we have a designated slot that students can sign up to, but we also run one for parents as well. So communication and interaction for us has really been, such an important item to prioritise.
Something to consider as well is that many children might be lacking like communication aids that they're used to using at school. Might be PECS folders or communication books or even like eye gaze machines. So something that I found helpful is to suggest sharing videos of interactions that those children might take part in at school, so that parents have a reference point and they can see, using software like Tapestry, to sort of see these videos of what happens at school, and then also provide the physical sort of resources as well. As a school, I've been suggesting to make symbols for parents where possible, and copies of that communication aid, whatever that might be, so that they can have one at school and one at home. So, but I think communication between the parents and that engagement that everyone's mentioned is so important.
Sorry, Julie, I forgot to ask you as well.
No worries. So I think it's what happened in our school for communication and interaction that need to be put forward. We do lots and lots of personal approach, which is really important to our school, which is quite sizable, not that big, not that small. And we also have newsletter that we produce after every learning focus, and this help parents to have the ideas of what actually the learning outcomes are, and that will really be helpful for parents to conduct activities in line with our learning outcomes. Shanna.
Okay, I think, are there any other points to add to communication and interaction? If not, I think we can move on to the next slide.
Okay, so how have you supported common routines during homeschooling? I'll start with that, because one of the key things that came through from our teachers is that they all like to start the day with the same routine every single day. They did their circle time with their morning song, which is something the children have been doing since September, and it has hand signs and everything. And that is something that many of them really enjoyed, and it helped to kind of get them in a space for learning. That was one of the key things. One of the teachers said that she also suggested times to families to do things. So she knows the children very well. They're kind of when they're most receptive, this, that, and the other. So she would suggest that to parents to support them. But the morning song and circle time seem to be very effective. Kate?
We've been using Padlet, and what we have done is create a daily schedule on Padlet and have uploaded videos. So our children follow a specific routine similar to yours each day. So our children do like a wake up, shake up video. We record a good morning. We do a learning reflection based on the photos and videos that are uploaded to Tapestry from the previous day. And then our children will have learning challenges, a story or a song, and then a goodbye from all of the teachers. So we've been able to use Padlet to make a structure for the children's day that the parents can dip in and out of or can follow all the way through, so that each day is similar in the routine and what is done. But obviously the activities changed, and we've had really positive feedback from that. Shanna, I don't know if you want to go next.
Yeah, similar to both you and Angie, our timetable has evolved week by week, and we quite regularly survey our parents and our students and our staff. So we're constantly evolving and changing that, and obviously mindful of all of the students' I guess needs across the school, those with special educational needs and those that don't have them. We're also mindful of the different time zones that our families are currently in, so not everybody is still in Dubai. So what we've tried to do is to keep all of our live taught sessions in the morning. A lot of our families have moved overseas, so that the timing works well for them, but also it frees up the rest of the day for those children to have more breaks and participate in more of the sort of creative subjects. Something that we found was really, really useful, particularly when we were in complete lockdown, was having PE first thing in the morning. Obviously staying active and remaining active was really, really important, particularly where it comes to well-being. But we found that actually the students really responded to that being first thing, and they said that they felt more awake and more prepared. What I did find as well with a lot of my students that maybe struggle with perhaps more the core subject areas, for example, English and maths, it was almost the fear of first thing in the morning I have English, or first thing in the morning I have maths. But by starting the day with PE, it was fun, it was engaging, it really got them set up for that day. So that worked really, really well. And something else that we've introduced is Wellbeing Thursdays. So our Thursdays, we are not teaching anything additional. Those are social opportunities where we are facilitating social groups on Teams. It might be that they are using a show and tell element in the early years. Some of the older students, for example, some of our Year 6 students, and one of my I'd say more a student with more severe needs was actually responsible for hosting a quiz for his class, and it was brilliant to see him in that role, which, you know, typically he would shy away from any sort of social opportunity, but I think the safety element of being behind a screen, he was facilitating confidently, he enjoyed himself, so it was an amazing opportunity for him. And I'm sure everyone's doing it. Personalised schedules as well have been introduced. So some students don't participate in every subject that's on offer. We've been very, very honest with our parents, and we've just said, you know, do what you can. And there's nothing wrong with not managing to participate in every subject. Let's look at your student on a one-to-one basis, and let's really personalise that provision and that timetable for them. Julie, how about you?
In our school is pretty much similar with the two previous school, that every morning the teachers set up a morning routine before the schedule of the day, and usually our children the teachers upload a weekly schedule on their Google Classroom that easily be accessed by the parents and the high function children also. And the teacher talk about that in the morning to get everything understood by the children and their guardians. And then by the end of the day, we gather them again together, and then we make sure that everyone got everything they need for their assignment, and to check on the schedule the next day so that everyone is in the loop and well prepared.
Stephen, do you have anything for routines?
In terms of the children with more significant learning difficulties, I suppose I've been advising that visual support can be really helpful, whether it be now and next boards or visual timetables, as I mentioned earlier. I think what you touched on, Shanna, earlier about the fact that flexibility, and although you might have a plan in place for a child, it's sort of responding to their needs really. And I've been encouraging parents not to get too uptight about finishing a particular task if a child's engaged in something else. I think what's most important at the minute at home is that the children are engaged in something. So if they're engaged in some nice play, especially if they've got significant needs, it isn't always the best idea to try and end that early or to try and shift them to something else. If they are actually engaging in something and learning, then don't get too heads up about that and try to go with it a little bit, I suppose.
That's lovely. Thanks, Stephen. The second question, are parents able to easily access the resources required to carry out activities at home? And I think I would, the theme that went through the last question was about individualization. And of course, they have vastly different resources at home. The two really interesting points that I picked out from our students was, one is about sensory needs. As Sarah said at the beginning, children have a whole load of different needs. And there's one little boy that we've got who really needs to swim and walk, and he needs exercise. So when we were in complete lockdown, he spent a lot of time in the bathroom. Apparently his mum said he took a lot of baths, and that met his sensory needs to some extent. The same child also had a sitting ball at home that the teacher didn't even know that he had, which really helped him focus. So, and then another one had a helper, and they worked on the dining room table. So they were able to take part to a certain extent. Obviously, there are some, and she also had one student whose parents don't speak English, and he did not access much at all. So again, a wide range. Okay.
So we've been fortunate, as I said, Brunei hasn't been in complete lockdown. So for quite a few of our children who needed daily schedules or social stories, calendars, things like that, parents have been able to come and collect resources, and lots of our older year groups have been making learning packs of resources that parents, again, they have to come in during designated times to come and collect those. We've also been able to loan out some equipment like bikes for the children who need that sort of sensory regulation and some sensory equipment. So obviously there's a expectation of quarantining that equipment and cleaning it, but fortunately circumstances in Brunei have allowed that to happen. Our shops and things have also been open, so we've tried to think about activities that children and the parents can access with resources that they would hopefully have at home, but we have been able to go and purchase things if necessary. We've been quite fortunate here in that respect. Shanna?
Yes, very similar here. It's actually been a real learning curve, I think, for parents, and I think they have a really good understanding now of how to be creative last minute. We're again back to that flexibility. We're encouraging our parents to use what they've got available to them. They don't have access to the supermarkets, the shops. Online purchases are taking forever to be delivered. So what we've said is use what you've got available to you. And quite often myself and my team members we're using Teams to sort of, I guess, go live and have a bit of a nosy in their households, but to sort of give them ideas of what to use. So, for example, students that require the wobble cushions normally in the classroom, we've encouraged them to go and get some flat beach balls and sort of inflate those to sort of 50%, and they work as a really good movement opportunity. We've also encouraged parents to sort of move away from the typical pencil and paper and encourage children to be, you know, using pens and write on the windows, use chalk outside, use everyday household objects for counting. A lot of our students still need a lot of support with fine motor skill development and gross motor skill development. So we're doing a lot of webinars and parent workshops with them. I mean, I think every household in Dubai now have got beautifully clean cars. That's a fantastic way for developing gross motor skills. So, you know, we've got sandy cars that go and right out there, you know, your phonics activities on those. So use what you've got available to you is kind of our biggest sort of encouragement, I guess, for parents. But something that we had used for our students with additional needs previously, but something that has now then rolled out for the whole school, is we use a WAG, which is a week at a glance. And it's essentially a list of resources that are required for the week ahead. And like I said, we were using that for our students with special needs, but actually we've rolled it out now across the school, just to give parents a bit of a heads up about what's coming and what sort of activities you would expect your child to complete if you can. And these are some of the sort of DIY household objects that we would recommend to use, because we certainly don't want to be encouraging them to go out and purchase loads more. And I think, I'll be quite honest with you, I think the parents have really enjoyed getting creative, getting messy. Yeah, it's been lovely to see. It really has. Julie, how about you?
Yeah, that's really interesting, Shanna. And also, it made me recall of actually the first month when we starting the social restriction in Jakarta. People was actually, they were very panicked and confused, of course, but then the teachers as well. But then we found out that some areas are still open. So it's not that difficult actually for parents to find needed resources for their children learning at home. But there are possibilities also that we also could deliver some learning pack at home when needed. So, but then the second month of the social restriction, parents are able to be more creative than the you know, to use whatever resources they got at home, and they're happily recorded the activities, and all areas of development can be catered at home, and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have covered it really well. Just a couple of things, maybe for children with very complex needs. I've found things like massage stories really helpful, because you don't actually need any other resources other than yourself. So, and that's a really nice way of engaging children who maybe aren't ready for typical storybooks or story time. So massage stories, also sensory stories. Often you can use sensory elements from the kitchen, smells and tastes and things like that. So that's the type of thing I've been advocating, but very much agree with what everyone else has said.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. So the last question mine is, how have the children's workspaces been adapted whilst at home? And what do you foresee happening when schools reopen? So I think we've covered quite a lot. We're talking about the resources, but I wonder, Kate, if you would like to start by answering this question. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, just having trouble with my mute button. So we've seen parents be really creative and really flexible actually about the children's workspaces at home. We've tried to include a lot of things like cooking and things in our activities. So we've seen lots of children in their kitchen helping out. It's been really good to see the parents being flexible, like I said. So we've got one boy, for example, who just really wants to do most things in bed, and although that might not be the best posture for him. It's where he wants to sit and be comfortable and do things. So that's been good to see the parents doing that. It's going to be very different when we come back to school. We're just starting to prepare now. So we've all been walking around with our meter sticks for social distancing purposes. So that's going to be really interesting to see and difficult to adjust. And I think all of us are, although we've got a plan and we've got a structure in place, we're also prepared to be very flexible in terms of what our children are going to be expected to do and how we're going to meet the needs of specific children. So I think it's going to be another sort of learning as we go in that respect. Shanna, I don't know if you've got any great plans you can share with us.
No, absolutely in agreement. One thing to add that I found, particularly with the students that I work with, is really finding the appropriate workspace in their house or their apartment. Lots of parents were finding spaces that were quiet and distraction free, which is fantastic, but they were actually, I don't like to use this word that often, but invading their relaxation zones and their space where they feel safe and calm. So what we've had to do is work really closely with the students and their parents to find out where in your house is your relaxation zone, where you are not participating in schoolwork, but then where is your working zone, and them knowing the clear definition between the two, particularly for some of our students who sensory needs, our students with autism. They've really found it invasive that school is now in their home and that this is no longer their safe, calm zone. So that's something we've had to really support our families with a lot. The other thing as well is the emphasis on, and again, it's going back to using what you have available to you, but obviously just being mindful of some of the impacts it can have that could be quite negative at times. We've had a lot of parents that seem to be very concerned with handwriting and fine motor skills, for example, which, you know, has come as a surprise to them. It's certainly not the priority area for us in terms of handwriting for some of our students. However, when we've kind of looked into things a little bit further, we've actually found that students are using chairs that are just not appropriate for their size. You know, the tables that they have available to perhaps too high or too small. So we've had to just really look at finding those appropriate spaces. So again, I think somebody mentioned it earlier about the use of the yoga balls for students with sensory processing difficulties. We've talked about a lot of work with our parents on the 90-90-90 seating position and just making sure that students are sat appropriately, but meanwhile that they've got movement opportunities. The key thing as well, I think, for us is parents have gone, not all, but some parents have gone a little bit overboard with the resources. And again, particularly for our students that can get quite overwhelmed, we've had to sort of remind them that just have what you need available at that time. You don't need to plaster the walls with as a display. That can be actually a hindrance to a lot of students. So just kind of not overwhelming the students too much with, I guess, too many resources and things in their workspace. With regards to schools reopening, we are not too sure yet. We're all hopeful for a September opening. What that may look like, we're just not sure yet. We've been given sort of 3 possible options from the government, but for us, obviously, our priority will be that reintegration, re-establishing routines, re-establishing relationships. You know, these children have been away from school or will have been away from school for almost 6 months. So the well-being side is certainly going to be a priority for us. But what we are in the process of doing is really focusing on those key stages where transition is involved. So, for example, our FS2 cohort moving into year 1 and our year 6 cohort into year 7. So quite a few of the students that I support, that started months ago because we need to prepare them, particularly my year 6s moving into year 7 and secondary. It's quite different, even though we are through school. Lots of them needed a lot of preparation, and that is quite difficult to do at the moment because we are just so unsure as to whether school will resume in the building, or whether school will be online, or whether it will be a sort of a blend of the two approaches. So that's quite difficult for students that really need a yes or no answer. So I'm very, very keen to hear more ideas. If anyone else is experiencing that, would love to know more. Julie, how about you?
Well, it's like two sides of a coin, really, with the adapted workspace of the children at home. For our students who've been actually not that excelling when this during the normal school days, because of they are have difficulty to socialize or difficulty to communicate during the lockdown or social restriction. It can be yes, it's encouraging this behavior, but at the same time also they are more focused in what we are giving to them. And also we got report from parents, they're less irritated and things like that. But on the other side also, these comfortable environments that they have at home will surely make us the school another challenge when the school is reopened. I think that would happen. Stephen, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to mention about sort of how workspaces should really be dependent on the developmental level of the child. I'm a big advocate for play-based learning, especially for children with significant learning difficulties. And I think what's really important, and what's going to be really important when children return to settings, is that their emotional needs are met as best as possible, really. So yeah, developmentally appropriate is something that I'd want to throw in there. And then just when the return to school does happen, really learning from what parents are telling schools and making use of that information, really, because parents are going to have so much to offer after this period of time has passed, and it's hopefully something that in the coming years that schools and parents will think more about, that level of engagement and how much it can impact on the quality of teaching and learning at school, to have that increased level of parental input.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. That's absolutely brilliant, because one of the teachers that talked to me about the gift of online learning is about how she is going to rearrange her classroom and make sure that there is more time for play and more time for one-to-one short bursts of intense learning support, teaching. So I think that ties in really well. I think that we have learned a lot about these children, their parents have learned a lot about them, and we will be doing things differently. We are now back in school. We came back last week, and just to reassure you, my year one class went back. In fact, most people have gone back very smoothly. We're back in school with masks on, so the children can't see smiles from teachers, which just breaks my heart, because you need to see a smile when you come into school. So I hope that you will be able to use shields, or you won't have to come back with masks on. So the children are in general quite subdued, but we have all of our special needs children in, bar about 2, or the ones that are in their specialist classes. And our attendance back in school is something like 87%. So it just shows that the children want to be back in school. And the staff certainly feel that they have learned a lot about teaching. And of course, like Stephen said, with some of our autistic children, they are loving working from home, and they are producing much better work because they're just not distracted by the social pressures, particularly the teenagers. So we should hope that we learn a lot from this, and things move on, particularly in the area of additional learning needs. So we need to move on. I'm sorry, we've run on quite a lot. Could we go to the next, Shanna? I think it's your questions next.
Yeah, no, that's really lovely to hear, Angie, and a great point about the masks, and sort of leads quite nicely into well-being. So the next question, how has the well-being of children been maintained, and has distance learning had an impact on your safeguarding policies? For us, the minute we had about 2 days notice that we were closing and moving to a virtual school. So obviously safeguarding was paramount, and policies changed, I'd say, overnight. The biggest one that went out was the acceptable use agreements to parents and to students. We talked about staying safe online. We shared a lot of information about cyberbullying, about the appropriate use of social media. Here in Dubai, we have very strict laws about the use of social media, so that was certainly something that was a bit of a concern straight away. But also, just as we know, the online bullying that we hear lots about, that was certainly something that families were quite fearful of. However, I'm really pleased to say it really hasn't been a case here. So we're very, very lucky. We delivered the information regarding safeguarding in different platforms for us. So it was CPD for staff. We led assemblies for our students, and we sent out newsletters and emails to parents. For our SEND students, we actually spoke to them, not all of them, but where appropriate, we spoke to them on a one-to-one basis. We used social stories to explain the new rules, the new procedures, and they've been since then reminded regularly. I think as well for us in terms of the well-being, we've really had to prioritize that. And at the beginning, I mentioned that we had a recent inspection of virtual school, and the KHDA's priority was on well-being, the well-being of students, the well-being of staff, the well-being of their families. So for us, we've tried to introduce assemblies that have sort of a well-being focus. For example, we have Self-Care Sunday, we have Motivation Monday, we have Thankful Thursday, and that has been really, really successful. Staying connected has been a real priority as well. So down in the early years, we've had fancy dress mornings, group chats, start week. We've continued with routines such as Star of the Week. And just now we're planning key milestones. So for our Year 6 graduation and our FS2 graduations, all of those things that children would ordinarily be participating in, we know how important they are for the well-being of our students. So all of those things are going ahead. But I think the key thing is students, it's a very hard thing to generalize. We know, this is our role. We work with these students. Every child needs something unique. And for us, I think that has been the biggest learning curve, I think, for their families and for the teachers on how to prioritise well-being. Kate, I'm really keen to hear what you guys are doing. Are you there, Kate? I'm not sure if she's... Is it your mute button? If not, we can move to Angie and we can pop back to Kate a little bit. All right.
Sorry,
Are you there? Okay, fab. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, so we've been doing similar in terms of for our staff and discussing particularly online safety, because we've been using Zoom with our children, and also making videos which we've been uploading to our Padlet platform. So we did similar things to you in terms of educating the staff around that, and it's been quite interesting here because Brunei has quite a had quite a limited internet. So as the whole country closed down, then the internet providers all had to work very quickly to try and get it so that all of the children could access online learning. So that was definitely a learning curve for everybody, I think. And then in terms of well-being, one thing that has been really positive for the children that has been really well received is having little personalized messages uploaded to their Tapestry profiles from either their teacher or myself as their ANT teacher or their key worker, because we're in early years. That's been really nice, particularly as well for the ANT children to just have that little connection. And we've done things like reading their favorite stories to them, specifically just talking to them about things that they've done. So those sorts of things have been really good. The other thing that I've been able to do with one particular child who's got some challenging behaviours that mum finds quite difficult, because we've been slowly coming out of lockdown in agreement with obviously the school senior leadership team and with the parents. I was able to go and do some home visits and do some activities outside, creating like a sensory path for her to be able to access, and giving her resources. So that's one of the other things that I've been able to just do with one child because of very special circumstances. But those are the things that we've been doing. Julie, I don't know if you've got something to add.
Yeah, just a little bit that we have alternate learning focus. I agree with all the panelists that safeguarding is 100% very important for the well-beings of the students and the parents. So we, as much as possible, initiated an activity. We just had what so-called activity called a grateful or a thankful jars initiated by our one of our a counselor, school counselor. So every day, children and parents and teachers are invited to write down on a piece of paper what they are grateful every day, and that have given a big impact to the school society for the past 3 months. Who hasn't got the turn? Everybody got? Sorry, I'm lost.
I just have just something to say about safeguarding, because I do think that this demand of online learning has raised definitely some issues for some children. We have had to very much rewrite our counselling safeguarding policy as well. But we have also had some children who have completely refused to engage, who are perfectly capable of, but have completely refused to engage with the online learning that we've done. They've literally put their foot down. And it is, I think, a chance to protest for some children who are having issues and that haven't been picked up. This is an opportunity. So it's something that we're going to pick up on when they're back in school. It's very difficult to do while they're actually being at home, because we can't actually be in touch with them. And also in secondary, children who are withdrawing. So we've really talked to our teachers a lot about children's responses to the demands of online learning, and the children who are withdrawing and putting their foot down and not engaging, then they're a highlight for now when we're starting to be back in school. I think, Stephen, did you want to add?
Nothing really, I think it's really important to have a level of flexibility again with parents, and to I think each parent has sort of different expectations of what they want from a school at the minute, and some feel like they want lots of input, and some would rather very limited input and would rather get on with things themselves. So I think, as with some of the other things we've discussed, it's important to have that level of flexibility, I think. But in terms of a safeguarding responsibility, if you really feel there's a lack of engagement and you're concerned that if you're not happy about what's going on at home at the minute, obviously we have an obligation to follow that up, really. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
I think that's really important. We've actually assigned a member of the senior leadership team to each year group across the primary and the early years, and the same for the secondary school. So where there are students that are disengaging with online learning, it's our responsibility to go and find out the story and the background of that family. Quite often we're finding that the parents are, in some cases parents are still both working. We have quite a high nanny culture here in Dubai. So what we've actually found is that lots of the nannies are supporting the children with their schooling, and that the sort of behaviour management side of that is not always the same as if it's the parents. So we've had to work very closely with nannies and upskill them in sort of supporting children at home. I'm just conscious in the chat, there's quite a lot of discussion about social stories. While it's being discussed, I wondered if that's something just to quickly touch upon, because I think a few of us mentioned the use of social stories, and there are some fantastic ones out there. Stephen, I think you've just sent a link, haven't you? Which is fantastic. One thing I would just add to the discussion on there is about personalising them. What we've found really successful is when we've photographs of the students and their families themselves, when we've used real life context, real life photographs of hand washing, for instance, things like that. So I mean, there's a lot of information in the chat, which is fantastic. So thank you everyone for your contributions. Stephen, I don't know if you wanted to add just quickly about your link.
Yes, I've just put a link there that has, it's a specific document for supporting children with autism, but it does have a social story contained within it. It's a PDF, so I thought some people might find it useful.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we're moving on to the next slide, Julie, which I believe is yours.
Thank you, Shanna. How have you planned for assessment and monitoring of learning during the homeschooling period? To be honest, there cannot be such assessment that we can conduct at school. So what we been doing is that we just started the home-based learning in the beginning of March. Yeah, so we continue with the curriculum or IEP or ICP for the term 4, and we just did some observation from the outcomes of the activities that the students are having at home with their parents, and from that we just review and map the students' progress, and from the progress that we already taken the data from, we can map the ability of the students, what to review, what to enrich. And I think it's more to the process of observation, and we focus on the quality, not to the quantity. And just like what the panelists mentioned before, I think it's a more adjustable or adaptable period of time for the completion of activities or assignment that the students and the parents are doing at home. Stephen, you must have lots of idea about assessment, because I think it's your expertise.
Yeah, possibly. But I think to counter that, I would say that it's not a top priority at the moment. As I keep coming back to during this webinar, I think the emotional well-being of children is the most important thing at the minute. So I would be encouraging schools and parents to focus on that as much as possible. So as much as yeah, my job involves a lot of talk about assessment at the minute, I don't think that's the most important thing. I think encouraging lots of communication between parents and teachers to discuss learning and how children are progressing is obviously important, but the sort of formal side of assessment, I wouldn't be advocating a huge amount of time being devoted to that at the minute personally.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kate, you want to say something about it?
Yes, so we have very much taken the same approach as Stephen is suggesting. Our main focus is on the children's emotional well-being and that area of their development. We are putting for the early years children, they will get a certificate of sort of attendance. We're not doing reports for our early years. The older children are having reports, but it will literally just have the coverage, what has been covered over the home learning. So we are just focusing on getting the children settled, hopefully feeling secure at home and back in school if we get to that point. And really the understanding is that assessment is definitely not our priority at the moment. Angie, I don't know whether it's the same in your school or different, because now you're back at school.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I think I absolutely agree with the principle that you were all reiterating, really. And one of the teachers that I spoke to said that she because her class has the sorts of level of need where they need large amounts of repetition, what she is doing to make sure that everyone is okay in terms of the learning, because it's been so uneven, is that she's going over what they did during the homeschooling period. So of course that is good for the children, that it's reinforcing, and she gets an idea of the sorts of progress that they have made. And obviously students who haven't maybe engaged very well, she can give them a little bit extra. So it has been very difficult. We are writing reports. I think for the older children, they're based on previous progress, rates of progress. I think the rate of progress before homeschooling is really what we need to go on, because the rate of progress in homeschooling, it would be very unfair if we wrote reports based on that, because of course everybody's experience is so different, and well-being is definitely the priority. Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same as everyone here. For us, we have been asked to write reports, but ours are very much different to how they would have been. We're certainly not reporting on attainment. In terms of progress, we're monitoring and reporting on, I guess, the expected levels of progress, particularly for our SEND students, which I've got to say, my goodness, they've blown us out of the water. They've really done very, very well. But I think the targeted approach, the one-to-one, has been fantastic. But what we are assessing and reporting on is, like you guys have said, emotional well-being, the engagement in the virtual learning. So it'll be very, very reflective of that. One thing to add in terms of monitoring of learning, because from an inclusion perspective, we're still continuing with our one-to-one group, our one-to-one sessions, our booster groups, our interventions. So we're actually able to assess, although it's not formal, we're constantly assessing, we're constantly monitoring those students. We did hold a progress check week about 2 weeks ago, which, where appropriate, students were using Microsoft Forms and live one-to-ones. That because we were told when we were closing that we wouldn't be opening until at least September. So we had kind of prepared for that in advance. But obviously it's very, very unique. It's very simplified, and it's obviously been differentiated for our students with SEND. And where it is going to cause difficulties, or if it's a trigger point of anxiety for our students, then we've just not bothered. Like we said, the emotional well-being is what's important. And I guess obviously Stephen using Tapestry, and we use Seesaw, that's an amazing opportunity to monitor learning all the time. If you've got photos, you've got videos, it's just a perfect opportunity. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. And did you want to add something on this before we move on? Angie, you want to add something?
No, that's fine. Thank you. I give
All
him a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. So I think we should move on to the next slide. Stephen, I think it's your turn.
So the impact of COVID-19 has been far-reaching and unprecedented in so many ways. Now we are moving into another phase, commonly described as the new normal. We are facing more challenges. Transition from school to homeschooling, then transition back to school will create high emotions for all. Some may feel dread and anxiety, some may feel excitement and enthusiasm. How are you working to manage expectations about what the new normal will be and scaffolding support for learners and their families? So I'll start here. I think honesty is the key word, really, because no one really knows even what September is going to look like, let alone what 12 months' time is going to look like. So I think regular communication, regular updates on the way that we're dealing with this situation, and just honest and open communication with parents as much as possible. I think it's too difficult to tell parents exactly what's going to be happening even 3 or 4 weeks down the line at the minute. So I think we just need to keep those communication channels as open as possible, and using things like online learning journals will hopefully be really useful for schools. Julie, do you want to add anything?
I think it's almost the same that I don't think we should having too much expectation by the time the school open or reopen later on. We will just start with what the situation or where the student at that time, because but one thing that we have to highlight is that the students they've been going through so many things, and I think one thing about their being adaptable and being resilient, it can also be highlighted. We can start from that values that they've been having throughout the lockdown time, I think. Yes, not much expectation.
Thank you, Julie. Just to remind everyone, if they could have their microphones on mute while we're chatting, please. Shanna, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, we've certainly, yeah, it's a huge part of the new normal. I hear used a lot. These conversations for us are happening now. Obviously, we're constantly scaffolding support. For us, in terms of returning to school, it's very much about being positive, lots of enthusiasm. We cannot wait to get back to school. And I think what we've been saying to our families is that we're already anticipating that there are going to be difficulties with separation anxiety, promoting independence again. A lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of our students depend on nannies here in Dubai, and have really relied upon one-to-one support. So promoting those independent skills again is going to be crucial when we return to school. I've seen a really lovely post. I'm going to try and find it and add it to the chat, but it's about the 5 R's. I don't know if you're familiar with it, the 5 R's of the recovery curriculum. And it talks about routines, relationships, retrieving, so obviously going back and retrieving the information, remapping, which is something we keep talking about, how we remap for the future and what we take from this, and then reteaching. We know that not every student has had access to the same levels of learning. So for us, that's a really, really important thing. But for us, it's the emotional well-being, it's the relationships and re-establishing those at the beginning. Kate, over to you.
Yeah, so similarly, so we're actually preparing, as I've said already, we're actually preparing to go back to school and try and figure out our new normal. One of the things that we've all been doing in the early years is creating videos to send to our families, because our classrooms and the part of the routines will be slightly different for some children. So we've done that. We've created videos like walkthroughs of, this is what you'll be doing, this is how we've changed the classrooms, and that will be sent out to parents when we have a return to school day, and they'll be able to show the children. So they are directed at the children. So the children get an idea of the routines, what the classroom is going to look like. We've explained that there will be less resources because of cleaning and things like that. So that's one thing that we've done that we're hoping is going to help prepare the children and manage the expectations of the parents. So for example, we're saying that parents can't come into the classrooms just because of, well, for obvious reasons. So managing that expectations of parents, because normally in our school we have quite an open door policy and parents pop in and out. So managing that, as well as managing what the children are going to expect and come into, has been important for us. So those videos we're hoping are really going to help. Angie, seeing as you've already gone back, I wonder whether there's any top tips you could provide the rest of us.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that's happened for us is reassuring both the staff, the students and the parents that everything is being done to keep everybody safe, and people will accept all of those restrictions if you can give that that reassurance. People need reassurance. There's a lot of fear, not necessarily in the students so much, but definitely in parents. And what we have found that we have done is daily adaptations in the first few days. We've actually got 50% of our students back on campus at any one time on a rotating basis. So it's been a logistical challenge, but I think we have done it amazingly well. Our leadership team are brilliant, and they have literally daily things have changed, and we've communicated constantly with parents and teachers about those things. I think what one of the underlying things which not everybody has anticipated is that this is exhausting. We've been through quite a traumatic time, and going back into school is a form, is stressful, because everybody wants to do everything right and keep everybody safe. And therefore, it's really important to understand there's a high level of emotion. People need reassurance and support. And we need to keep doing that constant adaptation. So don't underestimate the challenge, I think is what I'm trying to say. But if everybody works together and you're all pulling in the right direction, and I sense a real sense of agreement between us, but I know that it's different when we're working with some aspects of leadership who have different priorities. It's just really, this is where the well-being is so important. We have to look after each other, our students and our parents. And if we can reassure them that we are doing that, and you have to constantly adapt. You think you've got it sussed, and then something else has changed. We thought we were all organised to go back to school, and then we were told, but you can only have 50% of the students. And so all of our plans had to change almost overnight. So be prepared for things not to be the way you thought they were going to be, and just adapt, and communicate. And that's how you build trust in a community. This will definitely strengthen our community. It already has. So there's some real positives to come out of that.
Okay, I think we've heard from everyone there. Is the next slide?
Thank you so much. Really sincere thanks to all our roundtable speakers for sharing your thoughts, insights and experiences. We have on screen now a few links to some of the resources and websites that have been mentioned during the discussions. A copy of the slides will be shared with you, accompanying a recording of the session. In addition, we will be copying the points picked up through the active chat and the links and resources that have also been mentioned there. We have just a very short amount of time just to pick up a few questions and queries that have come in. One is very specific, and it's to Julie. And Julie, a couple of people have asked if it's possible to see an example of the newsletter that you mentioned. If that's
Sure.
If that's okay, Julie, if you can send it in to us, we'll make sure to send it out as part of the resources going out to people with the recording.
Sure. I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to send to you, and you can do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'd quite like to invite one of our participants. Megan, I think you're still online. Megan is a speech language pathologist. Megan, could you take yourself off mute, see if we can hear you?
Hello there. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Megan. Thank you. I noticed we picked up some of your comments in chat. You were saying some great things around social stories. I just wanted to give you an opportunity, perhaps just to say a few things to our participants.
Oh, well, I think you all covered it very well. I'm quite impressed with, what you all shared, and we'll definitely be taking advantage of those resources. I think it's just important for, after looking at the resources you share, that if people are struggling, that, something is better than nothing. you know, it's the process that matters, as long as you engage your child or your students in the process and you know them. So, you know, make it fun for them. You know, if they have particular preferences, maybe they like to sing, you can sing the social story, and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be fancy. It could really just be a couple snapshots, or looking at your phone, or doing a run through as you walk through what will be maybe a daily routine. So, you know, release the pressure and realize that your kids know you and love you, and appreciate all the communication that you provide for them in this difficult time.
Thank you so much, Megan, for that contribution. It's really welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of questions now for our speakers that are kind of covering the same thing. So Christina asked very early on about parent communication for non-native English speakers. And I know, Angie, you mentioned that one of the children in your school, actually this became a barrier to that student accessing the curriculum. Does anybody want to sort of add anything around that subject?
I'll just say that I think in Singapore we're very lucky because English is spoken widely, and this particular parent was also on Zoom with a mask. It was a very difficult situation, and I think we have to acknowledge the level of fear and difficulty. Having said that, we have a fantastic team of teaching assistants who speak English, obviously, because they work in our school, but also they speak a whole range of other languages. So we have used our teaching assistants to be a mediator, which has had a certain amount of success, I've been told. So that is one way to support parents, because these teaching assistants know these students as well. So that is one aspect, but it's definitely a challenge.
Thank you, Angie. And just following on around supporting parents, Stephen, you and Shanna are actually making lots of sort of points around strengthening that homeschool partnership. And there's a sort of question around that, really, where things have been effective and worked well. And Stephen, you know, you mentioned about really sort of finding ways to do this. And I think, Shanna, you talked about webinars, etc., with parents. Are these things that you see you would be wanting to build on as schools, as students start to move back into school?
I think so. I mean, I think it's quite common for those of us who've worked in early years to have really high levels of communication with parents, and as well in a special school as well. I worked in a school for children with very complex needs, and you do inevitably have lots and lots of communication with parents. But I think possibly children who are slightly older or with more moderate needs, where the parents and the teachers haven't in the past maybe felt the need to be in communication as much. I think hopefully there'll be an impact further up the schools, really, for older children. Parents will be more feel more like they can contribute and share ideas about what their children enjoy doing at home and how. And teachers love to have that information. It's not something that maybe Key Stage 2 teachers or Key Stage 3 teachers in a mainstream school are particularly used to, but it is really helpful to know more about the children in your class so that you can plan around those interests, and you can be really specific with the way that you set tasks. So I hope that it's going to be a positive to come out of all this, really, that increased parental engagement.
Thank you, Stephen. Shanna, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement there with Stephen. We're actually a private school, so parents pay school fees for us. And I'd say prior to COVID-19, not in all cases, but there was quite I guess a philosophy of, well, you're the teachers, you're in school, it's your job, get on with it. You know, I pay you to do this. Whereas obviously with the situation that's happened, our parents have really had to take on that role of being a teacher as well as a parent at home. And I think it's actually been fascinating for them to see just exactly what their children are capable of. what they find difficult, their learning styles, all the things that we talk about so regularly. You know, we talk about focus and attention, we talk about movement breaks, all of these things that I think until they actually are spending quality time working and learning with their children, I think they've now got sort of a newfound respect for that. And like Stephen said, listening to their ideas and their opinions, I think has just been amazing. I feel moving forward that there's going to be much more of a strengthened relationship with our parents. I think there's going to be much more mutual respect between teachers and staff and the parents. So I think there will be positives to come of what has been quite a negative and upsetting situation for the world. I feel like there will certainly be some positive things to take out of it. And I think every single one of us, whether that be now or next year, when we eventually return to our normal working lives and schools, I think we will all take something from this, and I think we'll all feel much more skilled in many new areas that perhaps we didn't realise we had the capabilities of before.
Thank you, Shanna. Just two more very quick questions because they're very specific. Emmeline Pang has asked or said on the chat, I have an autistic boy in preschool who loves hugs. Is there anything you can recommend in the way that we can talk to him about social distancing?
I just jump in here. I think I've been really concerned about any schools that have been sort of setting up preschools with desks 2 meters apart. And 3 and 4 year olds are meant to be close to people and they need to be close to people. So I think there needs to be another way. I think we need to consider more around like the bubble approach and things like this. But I think it is so important for those children to still have physical contact with people. They're going to be emotional, upset. If anyone's taught in a nursery or reception class, they'll know that September's a really challenging time because drop-off time, that children need so much emotional support. So I think it's really unrealistic that a child who needs a hug can't get one. I think there needs to be other ways of working this, and I'd say going for small groups and bubbles is the way to do that. But I really think it'd be a very negative thing to withhold that emotional support for those children.
I completely agree, and what we've done in our early years in preparing for children coming back is we have said to the parents and made it very clear that if children are distressed or they need comforting, then that will absolutely happen because it's part of their emotional and social well-being, and we definitely think it's something that's very important. So obviously we've asked staff, and so for example, one of our teaching assistants is pregnant, so she has said that she wouldn't want to do that, and we've absolutely respected each person's particular wishes. But for parents who maybe are not happy with that, then they're just going to be told that they need to keep their children at home, because we will not deny that sort of comfort or attention to a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old. So that's what we're doing, and we're having those bubbles. So our children will just mix in their small class groups. So for tracing, contact tracing and stuff, we've got those small bubbles. So that's how we're addressing those concerns.
Thank you. I think that's something that people will be struggling with as different countries have got different arrangements. I know in Vietnam, for example, schools thought they would need to social distance, but they haven't. In the Netherlands, children are expected to social distance, but then other places are facing challenging restrictions. Final question, because I'm afraid we're out of time. Again, a very specific one. Angie, I think it was you that mentioned how difficult it was for you to see children coming in and not being able to see smiles because of face masks. The question is, has anybody got any examples of overcoming face masks as a barrier to non-verbal communication? Any examples from anybody?
Oh, well, our speech and language therapists wear one of those Perspex face shields. and children under 12 are allowed to wear a Perspex face shield. Do you know what I mean? It is a band that goes around the head, so they don't have to wear a mask, and it's a piece of Perspex that you can look through. Quite a few of our children coming to school, and they have a hat with a whole round of Perspex around it. So they have this little bubble, and then you can see faces. Yeah. So there are alternatives to that. Apparently, when the first children in school were our most needy special needs children, and apparently they all turned up with the this shield, this Perspex shield or visor sort of thing, and they tolerate that, and they can see. The Singapore government has said children over 12 cannot just have that. It's not as effective as having a mask, but it is much easier to tolerate. So that is an alternative.
Thank you, Angie.
One of the things that I've seen that was actually reported in the news, and it was on social media, so other people might have seen it in hospitals, because doctors and things were and nurses were having to wear lots of PPE equipment, that they were putting like a photo of themselves smiling and waving so that patients could see, you know, not just the scary person in all the PPE, but a photo of them smiling and things. So we don't have the problem of face masks and stuff being mandatory at the moment. They're just recommended. But that was something that I saw that I thought could work really well, just having that little photo as a reminder of this is what the person looks like normally.
I think
Sorry, go on, Stephen.
I was just going to say, I think it links a bit to what I was saying about that emotional support. I think there needs to be, obviously, if it's a mandatory rule, but I'd be saying for children with significant needs, not necessarily medical needs, but significant learning needs, and also very young children, I'd really advise against wearing face coverings where possible. I think for older children, where you can explain the context and they understand why you need to do that, but it's so important to get that reassurance from a child's teacher or key worker that everything's going to be okay. And I think it's really, really difficult if you're wearing a mask to be able to do that.
I was just going to say, Kate, I'd seen the same thing, and it's something that we had discussed with regards to having the photo of the smiling faces. We were actually at the moment, it's the law here that if you leave your house, even in your car, you have to be wearing a face mask and gloves. So that's something in Dubai that is probably likely to happen when we do return to school. So what we have said, we will, in order to prepare our students, is we're going to send some videos, some pre-recorded videos of us. You know, here's my lovely smiling face, and it just looks a little bit different when I have this mask on, but the reason why is to keep us all safe. So we've talked a little bit about using photos and videos for that. But again, I mean, I'm with Stephen. If we can get away from not having to use masks, then fantastic. But I think where we are, it will be compulsory, certainly for the initial stages.
Can I just add one thing to that? Because in our experience, we have some children who would not go out because they hated wearing masks. And we actually had teachers feeling like that. So they were literally shutting themselves at home. And like you, Shanna, we have to wear masks everywhere. So it's well worth supporting parents to get their children to tolerate whatever they have to wear, and if it's a mask in the house, because otherwise they're going out of their house, which can be a big challenge for some children, and wear a mask as well. So that's a double whammy and way overwhelming for some people. So if that is going to be the case, then it's well worth spending time finding something that their child will tolerate and practicing it at home. And that is, so once that's done, then you know the rest of the hurdles can be addressed.
Thank you so much. It's some really, really great advice and guidance around those specific questions there. We're pretty much up on time. I see Judith has just checked in on what the 5 R's were, and Shanna has responded on chat. And thank you, Shanna. We will send out that information when we send out the materials to accompany the recording. Many thanks for all your questions and observations during the session today. We'll do our best to address any unanswered ones in the information we send out to you. And this information will also include the link to our post-webinar survey. You may find it easier to use our QR code, and there it is showing again on the screen. We welcome your feedback and input because it helps us shape topics for future sessions. On a final note, please do look out for our open mic session taking place this time next week. We have a big question for you and the mic is yours. So please respond via our Stay Connected Padlet. You can find information on that through Eventbrite or contact us, or you can take it from the slide here. You'll see that the question is all about that new normal that we've just been talking about. And we've already got some interesting posts on there. So we'll be discussing that, giving you a chance to participate in that discussion with the panel, sharing their thoughts with us. Our sincere thanks to all of our speakers today. Thank you to all of you also for participating in the session. We look forward to welcoming you to more of our Stay Connected 20 webinars running over the coming weeks. My contact details are now up on screen. Please do contact me about any aspect of the learning today, or indeed about implementation of our international curriculum. If our speakers could stay online, please, just for a few minutes, and our participants, if you can kindly click on the Leave Meeting icon, we'll complete the recording of this session. Goodbye, and please stay safe.